At Internet Innovators, we speak a lot about business models, about markets, but especially Germany, the US, maybe the UK. But being bridging worlds, the slogan of dmexco 2015, before, why not take a look into Africa? And I'm very happy to have here Mikul Shah. Welcome. You are the founder of Eat Out.
That's right.
It's the first online restaurant guide in Kenya.
Yes.
So we want to speak a little bit about Kenya, about Africa, about business models. But first thing, you lived a long time in London.
Yes.
Eat Out is a restaurant guide. Was that kind of influenced by you living in London where there are many restaurants?
Absolutely. So I'm a huge foodie. I love to travel. And London arguably is the best city in the world if you love food. Different cultures, different types of cuisines, and all sorts of budgets from high-end to really good, cheaply priced food. So in 2009, I moved to Nairobi. I was born and raised in Kenya, but after I finished my high school education and moved to the UK to do my university degree, I ended up moving to London and had no intention of really moving to Nairobi. But after I started a family, we decided to go back and join our family business. So in 2009, I moved back, and I was quite surprised that we had gone for a dinner to celebrate my wife's birthday, and I was quite surprised that some of the new friends who I'd made in Nairobi, who had lived there all their lives, didn't know the restaurant that I had taken everybody to. And I was quite shocked that how come a restaurant that is really good, a nice live band and great food and service, and also one that was advertising, for example, in the in-flight magazine of the national airline, how come these guys had no idea about this magazine? Maybe they were not big foodies, but definitely the problem was not that they didn't have money or they didn't want to spend their money. And in the UK, I was just used to using technologies that existed, OpenTable and lots more. Yeah. So with my IT background, I thought, I'm just going to build this. Okay. Initially, it was just a thing as a hobby. And then I quickly realized that after a 3-month pilot that actually we can make some money out of this. And we managed to raise some funding in the tune of about $500,000. And so that's how the company started. Yeah, absolutely.
And it's only in Kenya?
We are in Kenya at the moment. We have teams in Uganda, Tanzania, and Rwanda at the moment collecting content, but we actually haven't officially launched our product. That will happen in 2016.
And is Eat Out for everyone, or is it only for tourists and expats?
It's obviously started as a solution for people who are new in the country, but what's happened over the last 5 years is the restaurant scene has completely blossomed, and so more and more restaurants opening up, and so now it's predominantly for the local population. I would say it really attracts middle income and the high end, but we're one of our strategies is how to go down to a lower income bracket. But yeah, it's heavily popular with expats and tourists, but I would say that lots of Kenyans living in Nairobi are using our service.
Yeah. You said the restaurant industry blossomed in the last few years. What about the advertising industry? Because obviously you had to make Eat Out famous.
So I think I would say I'm a marketeer and a digital marketeer, and I think that marketeers are a little bit lazy. They're, a lot of money is still spent above the line in print, billboards, and one of the other reasons
in Kenya or
in Kenya, yeah. So if you by the time you leave the airport and get to your hotel or your house in Nairobi, you will see hundreds of billboards, and traditionally that's how people have been marketing. So when we came in 2010, the undersea cable had just been connected to Kenya, and therefore what's happened is internet speeds have really increased. We now have a 4G network in Nairobi, and the cost of data has dropped tremendously. And then at the same time, Facebook has sort of become really, really big. Google have set up offices in Nairobi. So all of these things put together meant that digital marketing for small brands became the only option because print and billboards were very, very expensive. And then what we've seen over the 5 years is that actually big brands have now learned worldwide that social and digital is the way to go. they don't necessarily have the knowledge of how to do that, but there's been a trend of people moving away from just above the line to a more 360-degree approach. So you'll see social, digital, as well as above the line, but also experiential marketing and actually activations and events are a big thing right now. Yeah.
Here in Europe, it's always about mobile first now. Mobile
Yes.
is a must. What about Kenya? Is it the same? Is mobile really important?
If you look at Kenya, it's probably one of the pioneers of mobile first. We have a 90% penetration in the urban areas of mobile technology. We kind of skipped the web completely and went straight to mobile. Mobile payments is one of the biggest things that has come out of Kenya. There's a brand called M-Pesa, which is partly owned by Vodacom, and about 68% of e-commerce is currently happening through mobile technology. So absolutely, for us, there's not even an option.
Okay.
Most of our users are accessing the internet on mobile phone devices. So mobile first is definitely, Kenya is one of the pioneers of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
It sounds kind of easy to do marketing in Kenya. Where are the challenges?
I think the overall spend is from brands is not that big when it comes to digital and social, and they also are not that familiar with the technology. So I think the biggest challenge is that how do you put in best practices? How do you teach people how to use these services? A lot of these services, for example, Facebook and anything else that's digital, are platforms that are intuitive, that you learn yourself. And so agencies have taken a little bit of a time to get adapted to these technologies. The bulk of the spend still remains in above the line and print.
But why is that? Why is it still in print?
I think, there's always going to be something tangible with those products. Unfortunately, you can't measure return on investment. However, for brands, in terms of general perception and value, it is very, very important. But having said that, most brands are now understanding that it has to be a mix of all sorts of different platforms and channels rather than just the traditional means.
From a digital perspective, do you have a wish, or is there anything you can say, okay, this is where my country is going?
Yes, I think for us there are lots of challenges. So beyond the digital medium, we have challenges around infrastructure. We have challenges around connectivity and reliability of connectivity. But I think the biggest potential for us is that in terms of penetration, you're looking at 10% of the African continent is on the internet, or around 10%. those numbers, between 10 and 20%. Whereas the rest of the world, you're looking at between 80 and higher than 80. So when you look at growth for any major brand, you are almost at saturation point in the developed markets, and you're constantly having to innovate and compete. Whereas the potential for growth is just enormous when our penetration levels are so small. That's just going to be massive growth for big brands. So on the digital sort of marketing front, I think there's huge potential for both for SMEs in Africa trying to communicate to the rest of the world, and likewise for huge brands that are established all over the world, because there's a huge emerging class who want to access their products. So in terms of reach, I think that's the new frontier.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Mikul Shah, thank you very much for your expert insights into the African market.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good.